I didn't call this channel Mgbgt guy for nothing. Got another GT in the shop. Well, this week we got a 1971 GT in the shop. Now this thing has started leaking a little bit of coolant out the side of the head gasket, and then it got a little hot, overheated, and now it's using a lot of oil and it's not running so wonderfully. So we're going to take a bit of a look and see what we got. What we're going to start with on this, because I believe we may have a broken ring in the motor somewhere here. But what I'm going to do first is check out the health of the engine. This thing has the electric oil pressure switch on it, and those are not known to be the most reliable. So I was going to put a mechanical gauge on it just to verify oil pressure, hot at idle, see what we got. That is one of the best indicators of the health of the engine, at least the bottom end. Because if you have, say, 25 pounds or less, then it's close to needing a rebuild. If you're at 40 pounds or higher, it's pretty healthy. So as long as we got good numbers here, then we're going to move forward with doing a compression check and leak down to try to verify whether it's a broken ring or what we got going on. And then we'll move on to pulling the cylinder head. And if it is everything we think it is, we're going to be re-ringing the engine. All right, so my little gauge setup I got is a old factory hose that with just a basic 100-pound pressure gauge on it. It's actually just a Harbor Freight gauge, but it seems to be pretty accurate. Now, this thing doesn't really want to run too well, and hopefully I can get this without being in the way. But it doesn't want to idle exactly all that well right now. Pounds at idle. That's really good. Higher than I expected to see. That's what he was showing on the gauge, but he had weird numbers where it really wasn't going up much when driving, which made me question it. But now that I see them kind of numbers, I'm okay with just re-ringing the engine. We're probably not going to have to do anything to the bottom end. So let's keep on moving. All right, since I've done compression checks several times in the past on the channel, I didn't film it, but what we ended up with was 126, 120, 85, and 122. Not the kind of numbers we're looking for. These things would have had, this is the 8.8 to 1 motor, it should have had around 150 to 160-ish fresh, and with the low or the high oil pressure numbers we're seeing, I expected to see higher than 126 as my highest number. But the 85 is definitely a problem. So now it's time to do a leak down test to see what's going on in each cylinder. And once again, also with the leak down test, I've done that before on the channel, I think at least twice already, so I didn't go through it on this time. But the numbers I got was number 1 had 10% leak down. That's good numbers, right where you want to see them. Number 2 was at 62%. 3 was at 76%, and 4 was at 64%. Those are numbers we don't want to see. Now, after listening through the intake and at the exhaust and at the cylinder head, it looks like it's all coming through the rings. So yeah, we got a ring problem with this thing. So now we need to get this motor out of here and get it tore down. So now we got the engine out and on the floor. All I just need to do is take the transmission off, put it up on the engine stand. All right, now we got the engine up on the stand here. After looking at it, find out that it's a 69 engine with a 71 head on it. So, and the car is a 71. So, not the original stuff. Not uncommon to see that though. So now we're going to take the head off of it. And we start with taking the rocker stands loose. Which actually, you can't get the rocker stands all the way off without the head bolts. Or the nuts on the head studs getting loosened. Because every stand has one head stud holding it down, as well as one of these other 5/16 studs holding it down. You should always undo the head in the same torque sequence that you would normally use. Now, before I actually pull this, I wanted to check, spin the motor over and feel it. And feel almost no tension at all from the rings, which explains all the blow-by. Not exactly unexpected. And you would do this in a circular pattern, starting from the middle. It's all in the manuals, the exact sequence. And now that they're all loose, we can go ahead and finish taking the rocker stands off, the rocker assembly off. At this point, I like to go ahead and take the side covers off, because when you go to pull the push rods out, it helps to be able to get a finger down in there and on the lifters, just to make sure you don't pull them up out. But if you're doing this in the car, you're not necessarily always going to be able to do that. So you want to keep these things in order, especially if you're not doing an actual rebuild. And you're going to put everything back where they came from, which we plan on doing. And I usually have a box that have holes in them, but I don't know where it's at since the move. So we're improvising with a piece of foam insulation from the walls. So you can usually just shake them and they'll pull loose. But if it doesn't want to, I can easily put my finger down here and put them back in order. Because you want if you don't put a new cam or lifters in it, you have to have the lifters back in the same holes they come out of, or you will wipe a cam very shortly after working on it. And because of wear patterns, you really want the same push rod in each lifter that came out. And there's big debates about these little shims that go on here, on in line all the time. The factory started putting them on in the late 60s because they were getting cars coming in with excessive wear on the rocker shafts under warranty. So they put these on there, which puts slight tension on the shaft so it doesn't work back and forth, reducing the amount of wear on them. And if the bean counters at the factory didn't make them take them off because of a engineer saying that you had to have them, I leave them. Ooh. Yay. I got one here. There she goes. Oh, I guess both motor mounts were broken. The one that broke taking it out and the other just fell off. So they were definitely in need of being replaced. All right, so we're hanging on here still. Not unusual. Gasket's trying to hang on there. So we got the head off it now. Now we can clean up the pistons, see if they are stock pistons or if this thing's actually been rebuilt and bored over. All right, now we got one of the pistons cleaned up and it has been rebuilt like we thought. It is 20 over. Now looking at the cylinder head gasket, we don't show any obvious signs that it was blown, but we do know it was leaking down the side here before and he was losing coolant. So next we can start taking lifters out here, because we can take lifters out. We'll look at the surface of them here and see that right there? That's what we don't want to see. That means the hardening is coming off the lifters. So we just have to, that one's just barely starting to. It's actually very common to see that, especially on these milk churn style lifters, because there are no good hardened versions of these available that are, you know, like Rockwell hardness of say 48 plus, like there is the bucket lifters. So these are a little more susceptible to doing that. All right, so now I got all the lifters out and I've cleaned them up a little bit. And what we're looking for, we're looking at the surface of it here. We can see here, this one here, we got pitting on the surface, which actually it's the surface hardening peeling off. But we're also looking, you know, look at the surface of that and see that you got a good circular pattern and wear. You don't want to see it just straight lines. As long as it got a circular pattern, that means it's spinning in its bore like it's supposed to. If we have any that's just straight, then that means that bore is too tight. And it would need to be honed to get it to be able to spin properly. Now in this case here, this one's just starting to pit. This one's a little worse. And then of course 3 is looking pretty bad. 4 is not too bad. 5 looks great. Good circular pattern. 6 not so great. 7 not too bad. And 8 not so great. So once I get it turned over, get the oil pan off, and we go to pull the pistons out and we're going to look at the bearings and find out whether it's got 3-ring or 5-ring pistons in it. We'll also take a close look at the cam, paying a special attention to 3, 6, and 8 to take a really close look at those lobes especially. Well, I got all 4 pistons out, and number 1, there was no broken rings on it, and when I pulled number 4 out, one of the rings hit the pan there, which is what I expected. So here's number 4, rings in 2 pieces. Number 2, the rings in 2 pieces. But number 3, the ring is in many pieces. But now the problem we got here is, let's see if I can find it, right here. You see really close here. This ringland, see how it opens up right here. So the ring broke, and then 2 pieces of the ring, one slid up underneath the other one, and now that ringland's all screwed up, so we can't put these pistons back in. So now we're going to have to sit and figure out what we're going to do with this engine and how far we're willing to take it versus throwing a used engine in it. It's one other little issue. We got to take a closer look at the crank now, because there's a little bit of a scoring right there and a number 3 rod cap. So we got to take a close look at the crank here and see what it looks like. Now this crank's already been ground 1010. So I'll have to take a good close look at cleaning this off and going through all of these and seeing what they look like. So now we went from just a quick re-ring head gasket to basically a full build if we're going to keep this engine. Because also the camshaft is very suspect now. There's a couple lobes there that are partially wiped.